Hey, everybody, it's Friday. I'm not going to say happy Friday today because we have a lot going on in our country that has happened in Afghanistan. I'm wearing a hat today. Craig, you didn't even say anything about my hat. I'm wearing a hat today. I'm covering up my pretty hair. I get a lot of crap for my pretty hair from everybody. And I have my Be Strong hat on. They're going to be for sale here too if anybody wants them. But I'm just asking our military to be strong and to stay strong. I don't wear hats very often.
I've never seen you with a hat on.
And I'm doing this in honor of the military because I think it's really important that at this time you need to be strong. Even though it looks to me like our leadership, your commander-in-chief is not strong. And it's tough. I don't know. I just, my heart is really heavy today because of that. But we're going to skip you, Craig, first.
Understandable.
Going off to my right is our very special guest, my daughter, Chanel.
Hi, good morning. Yeah, I'm just happy to be here.
From 1,100, 1,200, whatever, right?
Who's counting?
Yeah.
Just hop, skip, and a jump. That's how I like to look at it.
Thanks for agreeing to be on.
Yeah, I don't know if I really had a choice.
Oh, you had a choice. You know that.
No, I had a choice.
Yeah, and hanging out with me to my left.
Craig Newland. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram.
So today we're going to cover in our economic section, we're going to look at a poll that was taken a year and a half ago, right before the pandemic. And we're going to also look at a poll that was just taken about a week and a half ago, now 10 days ago, it looks like, yeah. And for our economy section, local section, we're going to talk about how law enforcement has struggled because of the juvenile detention center that was shut down about a year and a half ago as well. In our entertainment section, David Spade talks about the cancel culture and how dangerous that is, in his opinion. And in our political section, we will be talking about our, the committee that, excuse me, that demands a huge trove of Trump White House records. And so we're going to talk about that as well. A lot of messy stuff seems to be happening, and we're working class people. We're just talking about work right seconds before we went on live. So send us your comments. We're going to try to read your comments throughout the actual podcast instead of, at the end, because I hear that some people might have some questions for my daughter Chanel, so they're going to probably ask you about my hair or something, I guess. Chanel, you want to pick what which we're gonna talk about today? What should we get into today first?
I wanted to talk about the cancel culture first because
Let's do
I
it.
think, that one. I think, like I have a lot of discussions with people my age about the cancel culture and really what that's turned into and kind of how society views it now versus even like a couple of years ago. I feel like nowadays we all kind of have thin skin and that I don't think ever used to be that way. And so when did that shift happen and why did it happen?
When did it shift? That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really good. Let's dig into the article real quick. David Spade talks about the dangers of cancel culture for comedians. I hope comics are allowed to be comics. Before I read, let me say, when did comics ever get canceled previously? Like, I mean, I remember George Carlin and some of you probably don't, Chanel, of course, but
I love George Carlin.
Right? I mean, that was
he was on the edge. He was over the edge, but
yeah,
he was popular because of it, because he spoke his mind. And I agree with a lot of the stuff that he said. He wasn't filtered whatsoever, and I think that's why I loved him.
So, yeah, I mean, even he didn't get canceled, I guess, and he was way more edgy than some of these. But anyway, David Spade spoke out against cancel culture, calling the current climate tricky and noting that gripes often come from outsiders in the comedy community. And he talks about this because he got he benefited, is what the article says, from The Bachelor in Paradise because Chris Harrison departed the franchise amid racial scandal. The article goes on, talks a little bit about David Spade's history. We probably all know that SNL, of course, was big for him in the 90s. And of course, some really good. I mean, would you cancel the movies that he's been in today? I mean, he would kind of be canceled if they were done today, wouldn't it? Some of those movies, like
every Chris Farley movie that he's in.
Yeah, true,
which is
right?
like all of them.
Yeah. So it's pretty crazy. Just thought of that. But he says, I think all comedians have gotten together in a way to say we just have to keep doing what we're doing, and the people that come to the shows will appreciate it. He explained, but you get an outsider that comes in and goes, I was so offended. The intent is not to be mean. If the intent is to do it as a joke or a spin on something, and it is mean to people, but you're just making fun of that, I don't think that's horrible. I've been in the business doing it for 20 years, so I hope comics are allowed to be comics. I really hope so. Who's going to weigh in more on that article right away?
You picked that. You go first.
Well, that's just the thing, is that they're not doing anything differently than they have. I don't really think they have changed their ways in their industry. You know, they're still like approaching it in the same way, but the feedback that they've been receiving then is very different. So just imagine being them, and like, you know, he's been doing it for 20 years and he's been doing the same thing and he knows that it works, but now all of a sudden it's like unacceptable, and he'll get canceled for a lot of the same things that he's been doing for 20 years.
Right.
And
I just got a text. I got to interrupt you real quick.
Go
I just
ahead.
got a text. They're asking if they can, what kind of questions they can ask you.
any and all.
Okay.
Doesn't mean I'll have an answer.
We'll see
It doesn't
if
mean I'll have an
we'll
answer,
see if
but
we're getting. So send us a comment. Send us a comment. A question for Chanel.
Oh, this is going to be so fun.
And if you're wondering where Bella is, she's here playing with Jackie somewhere anyway. But with the military, we wanted to just kind of honor them this morning here, not Bella herself. So there we are. So go ahead, continue. I just got that text and wondering what they can ask my daughter. If anything on.
I can't promise I'll have an answer. But you can ask.
There you go.
But no, I was just saying, like, imagine being them, and they've been doing the same thing for how long, and then all of a sudden, there's a huge shift where they are canceled for doing the same thing they've been doing. And so, like, what are they supposed to do about that? Because all they want to do is the same thing that they've been doing for 20 years, and now it's not acceptable, and they can essentially get banned from the industry for doing such a thing. And nowadays they ride like a very, very fine line. And it's just like, how close to that line do you want to ride? What's safe, what's not? It's kind of like a gray area. And how can you be successful in that kind of environment?
It's a tough world out there. I mean, you look at Adam Carolla, who is fairly conservative, and I think they've tried to I think people have tried to cancel him, and he just keeps doing his thing. And so I was watching a video about Bill Burr and how he gets away with saying what he says, and it was very interesting in how he goes about his different segments of kind of pre-qualifying it of, I don't agree with this, or, you know, I'm not. He makes it so they can't really go after him because he kind of defends himself before he just completely throws people under the bus. And I'm sure that you can find holes where there's groups of people trying to cancel these comedians for saying what they say, because that's what gets people in the seats and that's what makes people laugh. And I just go back to, if you don't like it, don't listen to it. You know, everybody is so overly sensitive. Not everybody. Some people are so overly sensitive to everything right now. And if you don't agree with it, just move on. Watch your own bobber. We saw Lisa Lampanelli probably 6-8 years ago in Rochester, and I can't imagine her coming into Rochester anymore. I mean, she was definitely a shock comedian, and her content about dating black men, and oh my gosh, I'm glad she made her millions when she did, because I don't know if she'd be able to do that stuff anymore. So, but you have to listen to it knowing that it's comedy. It's not necessarily what these people truly believe in. They're making a living, making people laugh. So,
Craig, ask the first question.
I don't have a question.
Oh, come on. You said last week. You said last week that this will be interesting. See if she answers some of the questions about me.
I honestly haven't sat up at night thinking about
I didn't
questions
think you
to
sat up
ask.
that night.
What's one thing about your dad that people probably wouldn't know, that he wouldn't want people to know, but you're going to share it anyway?
He likes a lot of sauce on his pizza.
Yeah, that's true. That's going to go viral now.
Show up with a bunch of pizzas on your doorstep, extra sauce.
Right.
Yeah, you'll take it.
Yeah, she was telling me just a couple nights ago, she's like, you wouldn't have liked this pizza, Dad, that I just had. It didn't have enough sauce on it for you.
Must like deep dish then.
Well, that doesn't even have a lot of sauce. I mean,
just let it go.
Yeah, it's more likely. That's good. I wasn't expecting that answer.
But no, I don't think people really like. I'm going to give a shout out to my dad now because my dad is like also my dad, but he's also like my best friend in life. And he plays those two roles, and I think they're very different. But they obviously complement each other. And so not only is my dad, but he's also like my best friend in life. And so it's pretty cool to have both of those relationships with the same person. And that person being my dad. So
she says that because I'm hard on her too. I mean, I really am hard on her. All my kids.
Yeah, well, you'll tell me how it is.
Yeah.
And that's what you should do.
Like when I came down to see you, we had one hard day. Mm-hmm. And then the next day we went and had, some beers. And I don't drink beer, but, we had some drinks. I had some, it was a good day. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And I was even telling Javen, I was like, he challenged me in a way that like no one ever did. Because not all your friends or coworkers or whoever are going to like do that for you, even though that's like what you need. So you challenge me in ways that no one else will. And obviously that's a really good thing because I need that. And
you didn't always like it.
I know.
Yeah.
It's amazing what happens once you move out of the house and how those relationships with your parents change. Yeah, big time.
Yeah, it's definitely grown.
Yeah.
In a really positive way. And I will forever be grateful for that. And it's just like exciting to see like where it's going.
Nice. So. Thank you.
That's awesome.
That's very nice. I wasn't expecting that. I was like, I thought she'd hang me on the cross or something.
Nah.
No.
It's early yet.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I haven't gotten fired up quite yet.
So Chanel, what do your friends say about the cancel culture when you have talked to them? That's a comment we just got.
Yeah, I think a lot of my friends actually disagree with it. They kind of take the same stance that I do, and it's like, why does everyone have such thin skin nowadays? And really, what's the point? And why are you wasting your time and energy on these types of things? You could be spending your time and energy being more productive in your own life and your own community, and you're out there trying to point fingers at what everyone else is doing with their lives and their community. And it's just like, what's in it for you, and what is the purpose of that? And I would ask you to ask yourself that question about like, why are you really spending time and energy on these types of things?
What's in it for you? What are you going to gain out of making somebody else feel bad for expressing their feelings?
Right. And even what is like, how is anyone else going to benefit from that? Not even you, but like everyone else. Like what benefit is there? And I don't think those people really ask themselves that question. And I think they should, because I doubt that they have an answer. Or a good one at that.
Yeah, that's good reflection on that. I did a video scared of the share because I had talked to, this was early on in the pandemic, and people were very scared to share like certainly conservative opinions, and certainly anything that might have been a little bit like against the normal narrative that the news stations were doing and things like that. So I like literally addressed it. And what do you think when you're in those small circles and talking about that? Why do you think that it's so difficult for your generation to like expand that and fight, literally like say, hey, look, we're not going to tolerate this? Why? Because do you see them fight, like stand up and say, look, this is BS and we're going to say no? Not really. I lean on the side of like, probably not really, that they don't really do that. So they don't
And-
fight against the cancel culture
Right. They just kind of sit back and watch.
and watch it. So why don't they?
Stay out of the crosshairs?
Yeah. Why won't they fight?
I'm not sure if it's because they feel like they won't have an impact, or if they like try, what is the outcome really going to be? And again, they probably take the same approach of like, if I stand up, like what is really the purpose and what is the benefit for me? Like I can sit back and watch and have my opinion about it, but what is sharing that opinion and standing up for what I believe in actually going to do? So I think that's where a big piece of it comes from. I don't think it's out of fear or anything like that, like what's going to happen, but I think it's more so of like what is the purpose of doing so, and what's in it for me if I would choose to do that? What's in it for everyone else if I were to do that? It's kind of like what's the point kind of thing, kind of attitude.
Yeah. What is the benefit to them personally?
Right.
That makes sense.
So it kind of goes both ways. Is what's the benefit of the people that are trying to cancel others, and what's the benefit of people speaking out against the woke culture?
Right. And I think they also have the attitude of like, people are going to do what they want to do anyway. And so why does it matter what I have to say about it? People are going to do what they want to do. And they're, to an extent, like you can't really stop them.
There was recently, I read an article probably 2 weeks ago now in a restaurant, a political restaurant, not political at all. They didn't like stand on this side or that side or get involved in anything. And I can't remember exactly where they are or whatever, but they became involved because they said, that wouldn't work for their restaurant because of a mandate or whatever it was. I don't remember,
Sure.
Vaccines, masks. It doesn't matter. But so they came in and have, I'm not sure if they're still open, but people have tried to shut them down and all these things. And that's I guess why I asked the question. Like, if you don't stand up and say, draw the line for you in your life, it's going to come for you.
Right.
That's my point. And that's kind of sad with that. But, so here's one. I have a question for your daughter. Is she ever embarrassed about how strong her dad is? Did she grow up knowing her dad would be an influencer?
Am I embarrassed?
Yeah, how quote strong her dad is.
No.
I'm wondering if this means like strong opinionated, because I don't know. I have an opinion for sure.
I don't know. Why would I ever be embarrassed about that?
I don't know.
I'm proud of that, and I'll stand by that.
Thank you.
Day in and day out. And there's no question about that in my mind. And I learned a lot from you in that regard. And so I think that I'm as strong as I am because of how strong you are. And I got a lot. I mean, obviously you raised me, and I learned a lot from you. So it's crazy for me to say this, but I see you and myself so much, so much.
A female version of that, Logan. Oh boy.
Scary.
Oh, it's exciting. It's exciting because it's like, where am I going to be in 20 years from now when I'm your age, And I'm like excited for that, because it's very apparent that, even my coworkers will say like, you're not like everyone else your age.
For sure.
You're not like everyone else your age. And I'm like, yeah, I give a lot of credit to my parents for that, because people don't even understand like the impact that they have as parents and how raising their kids has an effect on them as adults and who they are as adults. Right. And so I give a lot of credit to you guys for that, because it's like my parents raised me to be this way. It's not just like me, my parents did this. They obviously taught me things and led me down a path to be the person that I am. And I'm proud of that, obviously. And I credit you guys for that.
Thank you. I think your generation was a generation of detached parents, where they weren't really, I see your friends, your older siblings, younger sibling as well, and they're very detached from like the real parts of life. They go to the sports games, they do all that kind of stuff or whatever, but they're like just very detached in a sense of they're letting everything else raise, the kids. And
sure.
So I've seen that. So thank you. The next part of that was, did she grow up knowing her dad would be an influencer?
Well, of course. I mean, I didn't know that, but like, of course, you're going to influence people in your life. Everyone should. And if you don't have an influence on people, then it's like, what are you really doing? And it doesn't even matter who that person is. You can influence me. You can influence your friends. You can influence a whole population, a whole city. It doesn't matter who that influence is on. Obviously, it's super exciting to see the influence that you have had in the community and how large that community is that you have had an influence on. And I didn't ever expect that. But of course, I've always seen you as an influential person to me. And Javen and Pierce, in our family, right? But did I ever expect that it would be as big as it is? No.
I hearing you say that, that's exactly how it starts, and that's exactly what I taught you and your other siblings. It starts with the person next to you. It starts, that influence starts local. When I go and speak, I can't even tell you the number of people that message me and say, I want to do this, and this, and make this huge thing blow up and blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, what are you doing in your school? What are you doing in your town? What are you doing in your family? And the answer is almost always nothing.
Start small.
You have to start there. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's good. Thank you.
Yeah.
I did it. Like, that's exactly the point. It's, you gotta start there.
Yeah, you never cross the finish line if you never start.
Yeah, exactly. Love her reply. I got a comment here. Of course she grew up knowing her dad would be an influencer. Love her response. So yeah, thanks for the messages. Send us some more questions.
I want to throw into that one is, your family obviously went through a horrible tragedy, and with my relationship with a lot of Gold Star families that have lost their children in the military or in war, and I've seen this from different families, is either you can make that tragedy, you can turn that tragedy into positive and help other people in your community, other veterans or whatnot. And a few families do that, and other families they want to stay to themselves and deal with things internally and privately. And there's nothing wrong with either of those, but it's just the direction that Matt and the family chose to go with after DJ's passing. So it's, you turned a horrible situation into, as much as it can be, a positive to try to help other people and other kids not go through that same situation. Other families have to deal with that same situation.
I've said since basically the beginning, circumstances do not make you who you are. Circumstances reveal who you are. And I think that's just so important for people to understand. Who are you? What's your character? Really down at the core. Are you going to, melt away and be destructive, or are you going to try to do the positive thing? Not that it's always positive. I mean, it's not. It's definitely difficult, and it's very taxing. I do not know of anybody other than a very small handful of people that have done what I do for this length of time. Almost nobody. And most of those are organizations that were built, not personal, not people. They might still be involved in the organization, but they have hundreds of people supporting the organization. There's literally, I might know of one or two that are me, like in that sense. And that's important. That reveals your character, I think.
And it's not easy to continue that, the first few years or whatnot after that tragedy. It's because everything's fresh and it's on everybody's mind. But to continue that as the memories fade through people outside your bubble, but you're not letting that memory fade. You're keeping her memory alive and that situation alive, and so that it doesn't happen to others. And my viewpoint of this, outside of your situation, is a Gold Star family that I'm very close with, and their son was killed 11 years ago, and they're still extremely involved in the community in his name and making sure that his story isn't forgotten, and they're helping a lot of other veterans because of that. So, but that's very rare that family, that people in that situation are still super active a decade later. So, like you said.
Yeah, and I think that you have also realized that the impact that it has is timeless.
Hmm.
So it doesn't matter how long ago it was. That's almost irrelevant at that point, because the impact that it has is timeless. And it will be relevant to all sorts of communities and people. And that's something that will never change, you know? So I think that's an important thing to recognize too, is that not only, so everyone has a story to tell, right? And everyone
Yes.
has the ability to share that story. And you chose to share that story. And the impact that that story has is timeless, and you will continue to share that story because of that.
And I think the story is not of the moment of what happened. The story is of character. The story is of character, of who she was, how she grew up, of what she would have wanted to continue, and you know, that kind of thing too. It's more it's really where my shiny acronym came from and stuff, is, you know, strong, hope, influential, necessary, you. And that's, I think, that's more what I teach, are those things, and people don't even realize it, right? You use that moment of what happened to teach those foundational things. So yeah, thank you. It's very nice. January 6th. Another thing that's going to be timeless. Certainly, we need to. Wow, we really need transparency in this, and I, you know, there's a lot of things that are really confusing, and one of those big things is, you know, you see a lot of different articles on this and what's happening, but let's dig into this committee that they've put together, and I say they as in. You know, really, the Democratic Party is pretty clear that they're very involved. I know a lot of people would say the rhinos and stuff. But anyway, Washington, the House committee investigating the January 6th assault on the Capitol demanded records on Wednesday related to at least 30 members of former President Donald Trump's inner circle. The demand is part of a sweeping formal records request that encompasses archived communications from the Trump White House, as well as 7 other executive branch agencies. In the statement accompanying the letters Wednesday, the Select Committee said it wanted information related to the gathering and dissemination of intelligence before the attack, security preparations around the Capitol, the role agencies played in defense of the Capitol, planning and organizing of events in Washington on the 5th and 6th, how the events of January 6th fit in the continuum of efforts to subvert the rule of law, overturn the results of the November 3rd, 2020 election, or otherwise impede the peaceful transfer of power. Blah, 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 blah. I gave them September 9th to get it done. I'm not going to keep reading. Let's weigh in on it.
It's like impeachment 3.0. They're digging and digging and digging to try and find something to hang on Trump. And I understand they need to have closure on this. But if you want to have fair closure, they should have had members from both parties.
Well, they have Liz Cheney.
No. And with everything.
Very establishment Republican.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think I said this last week, is you want to see an insurrection, look at Afghanistan right now. What, in my opinion, what happened in D.C. on January 6th was not an insurrection. They weren't armed. They weren't there to take over the Capitol. They were there to have their voices heard.
Did you see I don't mean to interrupt, but I think it's important right now. Did you see the little old lady waving the little American flag that was kind of wandering around, you know, with the whole thing? She was arrested, like, as an insurrectionist. Like, she was
Really?
just in a place that she even, like, wow, this is cool type. I mean, yeah, it's crazy. She was arrested.
Followed the crowd into the building.
She followed the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
Right. As the doors were opened up for them.
Yes. Were there things that shouldn't have happened on January 6th? Absolutely. The 5 people that they talk about who died on January 6th, only one of them was directly related to the violence. The other 4 were not
They had health issues.
Yes.
And that's a fine line.
It is a fine line. I get it.
You know, we had the
Of COVID with COVID, though. It's the same thing.
right. Peace officers that have died after they've gotten off duty and gone. It happened in Dutch County.
Mm-hmm.
They had an extremely stressful day, whether it was a crime scene or internal things in the department. They, got home and then they had a heart attack or whatever it would be. So there's that angle of it, but they make it sound like these 5 people were killed at the hands of the insurrectionists in the Capitol, which isn't the case.
Yeah, that's the media for you, though.
Absolutely.
And how they frame it.
Yeah. It's the story that they want told.
Right, the story they choose to tell.
And people are just hanging on to that. And it's like, you need to have a little bit more than coincidental.
People need to be held accountable for what people need to be held accountable for, not just for January 6th, but in general. I mean, we have some of the same Capitol police officers as a witness to January 6th on the stand, crying and hamming it up. And the riots in Washington and the police that were literally injured was like 50 or 60 in 2020. Like serious Antifa, BLM riots.
Peaceful protests.
Right. So.
But they're not all over the media.
Right. But these same ones that were like, we're going to, hold our ground and all this kind of stuff are crying. Is it traumatic? Sure. But is that trauma part of what happened the year before? And now it just reached its peak? So, I mean, there's a lot of those things too to look at, I guess.
And it'd be interesting. I have a lot of friends that are in law enforcement, and there's no way that they could speak their opinions publicly about the protests compared to the insurrection. I mean, they would be crucified if they were to do that, or they'd lose their jobs.
Canceled.
They would be canceled. But it'd be interesting to hear some almost anonymous opinions on their thoughts of this. So,
but they won't give them.
Not to us. Not to anything that's going to be publicized.
I think that says something in and of itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
goes back to the first conversation.
Yep. It's the biggest comment right there is not commenting on it.
Yeah.
I don't know if we need to really dig into this anymore. I'm not. This is a witch hunt, and that is what it is. If you call it anything less than that, I believe you need to get your eyes checked, because you're not seeing at all what this is.
Tripping over dollars, picking up pennies.
Yeah.
There's a bigger fish to fry right now.
For sure.
Trump's not president. Move on.
They're worried about him coming back for. That's what this is.
Yeah.
I mean,
so what happens if Trump is found to be liable in any manner with the insurrection? Does that disqualify him from running for president? What's the end goal? To try and shame his name? The people that don't like Trump are never going to like Trump. Period. And they're not going to vote for him. So you're not going to change anybody's minds. I think the majority of people are pretty set in stone.
You're going to change people's minds. By doing this, you're going to absolutely change people's minds.
You're going to party is what they're going to do.
You're right. And you are going to switch them from your dedicated Democratic voting,
base.
Yeah. To wait, let's look at this. Like I say, when 2020 hit and when they shut everything down, I'm like, you made me look. Now I can't unlook.
Now you're going to look more.
Yep.
And dig deeper.
And that's what this, I mean, I think if anything, if they wanted their base to remain their base, they need to, hunt down some of these, Cuomo's of the world and all the sexual assaults and the killing of people, and that would actually firm up their base.
The child trafficking and all that stuff.
All of that, rather than hunt for this kind of stuff.
Bigger fish to fry.
For sure. Let's go local.
Speaking of fish to fry, I don't know.
On Monday, the Olmsted County Sheriff's Office released a young girl they wanted to send to jail to her family instead. They said that they had no other choice because our area no longer has a juvenile detention center. Just over a year ago, Olmsted County closed the center due to decreasing youth incarceration rates and maintenance costs. Now, law enforcement says they're frustrated and confused because they don't know what to do with the arrested youth in our area. We wind up having to release people that should be going to jail. We release them to family or friends, said Sergeant Steve Thompson from the Rochester Police Department. If juveniles commit a very serious crime like homicide or sexual assault, the Dakota County Juvenile Detention Center has to take them from our area. For all other jail-worthy crimes, however, they don't. More often than not, we're being told no. You know, Dakota County has their own space issues and they arrest their own juveniles, Thompson said. There's a couple other articles that back this up. Craig, do you want to weigh in on this? You like our local stuff.
Yeah, well, and so, I mean, this goes back to the county fair this summer. I don't know if you were paying attention to this, but there was
for sure.
There's a group of like 40 or 50 teens at the county fair, and they were being disruptive, and the police, it's the county fair, so the county sheriffs were in charge of security, and they approached the girl that was kind of leading this group, and she was going to leave, and then she's decided to fight the police and was kicking and spitting, and they detained her, and they had nowhere to put her, so they had to release her to her mom at the fair. She assaulted the police, the sheriff's officers. So,
I think actually the elected sheriff himself was also assaulted at the fair, correct?
A few days later.
Yeah, not her, but
right,
at the fair.
Few days later. So they ended up shutting the midway down at dusk, and if there are any issues throughout the day, they would shut the midway down for the rest of the day. So disruptive teens completely ruined the county fair this year. And then now we have this incident where a teenager was tased, and they have nowhere to put her because the detention center closed. So in this article, I tagged one of our county commissioners to say, why is our detention center closed? And he said, budget reasons is that the detention center costs $700,000 a year to keep open. And there was a small amount of capacity. So it's a 16-bed unit, and they were never full. So it wasn't paying for itself, and other counties love to bring in their juveniles here because it was only $70 a day, and it wasn't they were losing a lot of money on it. And I think that's a pretty weak reason to shut down a juvenile detention center. And looking at other comments, there were some comments from a few people. One in particular said, I worked at the Juvie Center. It was never empty. There was always I don't recall if they said it was always full, but they always had enough people in there, in their opinion, to keep the doors open. Sure. And I said, I think this should be a priority for a county. It's to protect the rest of the citizens in the county. Wouldn't that be the same as our jail? If the jail's not full all the time, should we shut our county jail? And then another article came out the next day or a couple of days later from another news agency, and I think Matt has that linked, and they talked about why the Juvie Center was closed and having to send kids up to Dakota County. And there is an organization, it's the Dodge Fillmore Olmsted Correction Center, where they're trying to work with the juvenile delinquents to find out why they're acting out the way they are, and to use therapy or whatnot to try and change their lives around. And I can appreciate that, because there are probably a fair amount of kids that can be redirected to the right path, but there's also dangerous kids that they're letting back out. If you have to be tased, I don't know if sitting down on a couch with a therapist is going to be the answer. Maybe a little hard love for a couple nights might turn you around or
Let-
wake you up a little bit.
Let me ask Chanel a question. Do you remember what I told you guys when you were pretty young but old enough to understand? So what I said,
this
you
is gonna
remember
be
this?
fun.
Testing my memory.
Yeah. Do you remember this? I would say that I will be the first one to call the cops on you if you do something that you shouldn't do.
No, I do remember that. Yeah, no, I do remember that.
But here's the thing. Back then, it was a different situation than it is now. You have teenagers. When she was a teenager, she would have never been like, oh yeah, I'm going to disrespect the police. And now you have
That's parenting.
Right. Well, it's also culture. Our culture has allowed that to take place, which is part of parenting.
I think 10 years ago, you still had kids that would have done that. They wouldn't have been doing it because of social media. They would have just done it because they grew up in bad situations.
Yeah, but it was very limited. It was, I mean, even in our day, it would happen,
Right.
but it was very limited.
Or it's not publicized like it is now. It's not on social media like it is now.
Right. But now my point being is now if you tell a 10-year-old that if you do something that you shouldn't do, that's illegal, and I'm going to call the cops on you, they'll be like, that's okay. So what? That's my point.
It's almost like become more acceptable.
Yeah. To be disrespectful to
Right.
the police and all those things.
You're going to get notoriety from your circle because you stood up to the our old neighborhood. That there was about a 10-year-old girl, and 10 o'clock at night, her mom couldn't find her and called the police, and the police found her 3/4 mile away at a gas station, and they're going to bring the girl home, and she's just like, get out of my face. At 10 years old. And learning on that situation, I'm going to go back to that's parenting, knowing her home life. And it's a horrible situation for that girl, but she isn't being parented.
And part of that too is prosecution. You get a teenager, they know they're not going to be prosecuted in any fashion. I mean, what are they going to get? A few hours of community service at the worst?
And I don't know if that's touched in the articles or the comments that I got from the county commissioner of the local judges are going to let these kids out. They're not going to push these kids to be in jail for a week or two. Why not? And you see the same judge names pop up. You know, so-and-so let out of jail for bond. They have murder charges against them, and you're letting them out of jail on bond.
Yeah.
And they're arrested again for another attempted murder charge. It's the judicial system has definitely part to blame in this stuff because they're just slapping the kids on the wrist and letting them go home.
Mm-hmm.
And the law enforcement's hands are tied. Well, they don't have a place to put them, so they have to send them back to their parents.
And then you pay a different price at that point.
Right.
Yeah, what you get are Antifa, BLM riots later. You know, this stuff has been happening for the last 10 years where the prosecution, they're not putting them in jail, like, you know, for very long. They're letting them off really easy. And so the crimes are getting worse and worse and worse. And then literally in Portland, you have a young lady that was thrown in jail, I believe it was felony charges. I can't remember exactly what it was now, but destruction of property, a federal property for sure was in there that I had read. But then guess what? She ends up murdering somebody a year later.
Wow.
That's my point.
Right,
Let him
you
go,
pay that
let him go,
different
let him
price.
go. Nothing. Yep.
Yep.
Right on.
And that's a fine line of, and how do you know which criminals are going to keep going and which criminals may turn their life around? Because you do have success stories. And I don't know if anybody knows what the answer to that is, but you burn me once, shame on you. You burn me twice, shame on me. You know, if you're a repeat offender, is there much hope? Maybe a little bit of time in the cell is the answer. I don't know. I'm not law enforcement. I'm not a social worker. This is way out of my realm, but from the outside in, there's just some people that aren't going to be contributors to society. And if they're going to be a danger to others, why are they being let out repetitively?
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. What do we do? What's an answer? Do we have an answer, an opinion? Silence.
She's thinking.
Yeah, I am thinking. Well, I was thinking about when I first read that article, I thought it was absurd to hear that they shut down the juvenile detention center because of cost reasons. That's absurd. That should never be a reason. You're going to send these people back out into society when they're criminals.
Right.
And you're just going to let them go like that because of cost?
You're not doing your job as a county commissioner.
Right.
To protect the public. That's
Right.
one of the fundamental cores of our county government and our city government is to protect the public, whether it's the sheriff's office or the police department. That's one of the services that you are obligated to provide our community. And in this grand scheme of things, $700,000 in a budget of a couple $100 million really isn't that much. And one of the linked articles said that the 12 employees that were at the juvenile center were, I think they're pretty much brought down to the adult jail. So it's not like they were fired. So they were still employed by the county. So how much are you really saving?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a catch-22 problem that they need to figure how to get out of.
They need to open the juvie center back up.
Yeah.
And
just opening it though, there's, I think, more answers that need to be done.
Well, I
Need
have
to
some
take place
services
before.
that are available to try and get these kids on the right path, but have them at the juvie center.
Yeah,
Have that
yeah,
in
yeah.
correlation with some other services. And if $70 a day for other counties to bring the kids in isn't enough to cover the costs, well then up their $70 a day fee. Make it $100 a day, make it $150 a day. I don't know, but costs should not be a reason to close a juvenile detention center.
Right. And to your point of, these young adults, it goes back to their parents too, and the parenting, and you're going to send the kids back to their parents,
Which could be the problem.
right, which could be a contributor, and you're going to send them right back into the same environment they were in. So what makes you think that they're going to change by putting them back in the same environment they were in?
Or you're putting them back with the victims, whether that's the parent or a sibling. And now they're in the same household as the people that they were just assaulting or whatever it would be. So where does that liability come in for the law enforcement that has to do that, or the county, because they don't have a better system to deal with kids?
If you're just joining us, my daughter Chanel is here. I just got a message who the young lady was here. I'm like,
Martha
I
May
got a
lot.
I got a direct message. Yeah, exactly, right. So appreciate her being here. Yeah, you can ask her a question, as we've said, but we're gonna get into our economic section. Try to make the show an hour long. If you haven't already, send us a comment. If you haven't already, hit the like button or hammer the like button. Hammer out a share for us. We do appreciate it. But U.S. satisfaction drops. COVID-19 resurges as top problem. Washington, D.C. Americans' satisfaction with the way things are going in the U.S. has fallen to 23%, the lowest point since President Joe Biden took office. This marks a 7% point decline from July, just a month ago. At the same time, mentions of COVID-19 as the nation's most important problem have more than doubled to 26%. August 2nd through the 17th, Gallup poll was largely conducted prior to the collapse of the Afghan government and the Taliban's return to power, therefore curbing any potential effect that might have had on Americans' view. However, throughout the poll's field period, the U.S. continued to see a strong resurgence of the coronavirus pandemic due to the highly transmissible Delta variant. As I have said many times, I'm not all that intelligent. I can't read all that well, and I get too far ahead of myself, right?
Excited about it.
Exactly. Yeah. By the end of the poll, many hospitals in the U.S. were at or near capacity, as they had been at the height of the pandemic last winter, and Americans were increasingly concerned. It talks about some of these other things. I don't know how closely y'all read articles, but I want to pull this one into it as well from just a year ago. I think this ties in a lot. The reason I brought this in is because just a year and a half ago, I should say, right before the pandemic hit, a majority of Democratic voters believe that the economy system itself is unfair. 57% of Democratic voters said the country's economy is mostly or somewhat unfair, while 43% said it is mostly or somewhat fair. By contrast, however, 7 in 10 Republican voters said the U.S. economic system is fair. Independent voters were split on the issue, with 49% said the economic system is fair and 52% reported that it is unfair. What do you think of this? And I want to weigh in maybe in the middle of things here, but we have about 8 minutes to wrap up our hour show.
So about a little over half of the country thinks that our economic system is fair, and the
70% essentially thinks it's on the Republicans,
and 43%.
And 43. Mm-hmm.
So if you average those out, more than half of our country thinks our economic system is fair. I think they're just trying to pull numbers to make it look like people are upset.
Yeah. Chanel, what do you think?
I just go back into terms of like, how is this actually measured? How is this actually measured?
What do you do for a living? You don't have to say where. You don't have to say where.
Yeah, I'm a supply chain analyst. So I look at data, numbers, all that sorts of stuff, right? And one of the big things that we were taught in school is ask the question, okay, how is this measured? It seems like a very subjective thing. And so why are you like it? I just ask questions about, okay, how is it measured? And is it really objective? And what does it really mean? Because it kind of seems like they were trying to make something out of nothing by asking people, okay, do you think the economy is fair, somewhat fair, or not fair? And it's like, okay, what weight does that actually hold? And what are they trying to get at? Like, what are you trying to get at with that?
What's your end goal?
Right.
Data in, data out.
And subjective is key. And so a poll is very subjective. And that's one of the things why they break it up. Like here, let's see. What do you think is the most important problem facing this country today? And it's open-ended. So they have coronavirus, the government, immigration, the economy, race relations. So if you look at Republicans, let's go to August, which would have been conducted up to the 17th of August. So coronavirus, 12%, the government, 24%, immigration, 23%, the economy, 10%, race relations, 1%. You look at independents, it's double for independents for coronavirus. It's lower at the government level at 15%. Immigration is 10%. The economy is 10%. Race relations is 10%. Now let's look at Democrats. Coronavirus, 41% of Democrats think that the problem facing this country is the coronavirus. 10% is government. 1% is immigration. The economy is at 6%. Race relations is at 5%. That's your subjective answer right there. Like, what's your world view? And you get your answer. Crazy to look at that to me. What do you think?
Do they, what I'm also curious about is, do they list the sample size? Do they list the population that this came from?
Yeah,
I don't know if
they
I caught
did.
That
Gosh, I did see it somewhere. I don't remember if it might have not been on this. It might have been on something else I was looking at, because this is an actual article more than anything. But they do list their general sample sizes somewhere.
Sure. Yeah, I just like personally have a hard time like believing a lot of this stuff, because you can munch and crunch numbers all you want. You can shape them and form them in any which way to tell whatever story you're really trying to tell. And so I am very, very cautious with these types of articles, because I know that the data behind it doesn't necessarily, like, it's not actual data. It doesn't accurately depict reality and what people actually think.
It's a perception of people and their worldview for sure. Yeah. She's smart, isn't she? Yeah. Yeah, I could learn a lot from her, and I do.
We teach each other.
It's true. When you look at Okay, so when I look at this, and you see where we were at, what you think, 41% of Democrats in August think that the coronavirus is the biggest thing facing the country. Is the coronavirus real? Absolutely it is. Is it killing the most people every year? Nope, it's not. You look at the objective facts and things in those numbers, so it's certainly a perception thing. You go to a Republican worldview and what their perception is. I mean, that's almost a 30-point difference.
That's huge.
That is huge. So here's what I found in my opinion, in my life. I'm not going to say right now what I do for a living. You both know what I do. Everything that Matt Logan Speaks has generated, I have not taken a wage from it all. It goes into, I support people that, in particular, that do things for high schoolers. A person, or I shouldn't say but Matt Logan Speaks, supports somebody that is in Boston, actually, and supports college students, and a lot of other things like that. So anything that's generated currently goes to those things, and other high school students, right? So I do make a living. Other than this, I don't make a living doing this. This is literally for the mission.
Right.
And as Chanel well knows, we've talked for many, many months, many, many hours over it. So I see the entire country with what I do. I see the restaurants that are closing. I see all these things I see, and we don't have enough time to go and do it a lot. But so I see all these things happening. And when I look at numbers like this, I'm not necessarily a Republican or an independent or a Democrat. I have voted on a lot of different, over the years of my voting years, Republicans, independent even I've voted for, and Democrats I've even voted for, because I thought in the area that I was that they best served the purpose. I will say, looking at these numbers, probably the majority of Republicans are very similar to me, and they travel, they get around, they work, they're out in the trenches. You get I'll say this directly to coronavirus. You look at that number, and with the directly mirrored Democrats, and it's almost a 30-point difference. They're huddled in their houses watching CNN, and I've talked about that on the show before too. They only get, literally, there are polls that show Democrats and Republicans, they get their sources of information from very different places. Generally speaking, Republicans get their sources from a lot of places, like myself. I mean, I do a lot of even reading from very liberal authors and things too, and conservative authors, and all of those kinds of things, and from CNN and from Fox and from all these places. So my point is when you have these kinds of numbers, these kinds of things, I think we need to be very careful with the reality and getting allowing our elected officials to just do one thing. Democrats think that the coronavirus is, and so everybody should be in their house. They don't want to work. The Republicans are the only ones out working, by the looks of it. Seriously, the production. I'm not even kidding. I mean, it's gotten to that point. You see a majority of Democrats a year right before the pandemic close everything down. They didn't think that our economic system is fair. How is it not?
You work hard, you get rewarded.
Yes. I know that's kind of a ramble.
Very simple, but
I know it's kind of a ramble and a rant, but the economy depends upon confidence. And we're losing it. And that's why I wanted to show overwhelmingly the Democrats don't have confidence in our economy anyway, when it was good before the pandemic. And now look at what they're concentrating on. The economy is 6% and inflation is skyrocketing. 6% of Democrats think that the economy is part of the problem. I don't know. It's hard. I think we're in trouble.
We're getting to a fork in the road pretty quick.
Yeah. Confidence is everything. What do you think, Chanel?
Yeah,
We got to close this up.
I don't want to close it out.
No, well, we have to close it out. I'll close it
Yeah,
out.
oh,
but-
sure. Yeah, no, I think we're in trouble too. It's hard to obviously predict the future and what's going to happen. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
But no, I agree with you. I don't really disagree with anything that you said. And we are in trouble.
And you disagree with me often.
I do.
By the way.
I do. I'm not afraid to share my opinion.
No, exactly.
But I
So
sat
it's
there
not
and
that.
nodded and agreed with everything that you said. And so I feel the same exact way as you do. And it's just like, the question that I ask myself is like, okay, what am I going to do about it? Do I want to act on this? Do I not? I can think and feel and have my opinion, but what do I do about it? And I don't think I really have a good answer to that question.
That's okay.
Kind of ties back to what you said earlier of calling people out for the cancel culture. Well, what am I going to do that's going to make a difference?
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have an answer for that either. How am I going to change that? How am I going to change people with different views, minds, except what we try to do on the show of look outside your bubble and do your research and look at the other side of the
I haven't
story.
said that this show yet, have I?
No, you haven't.
Do your research. Don't take our word for it. Go look, go read.
And hammer the like button.
Yes, hammer the like button. You're not going to talk about, never mind. Last week, there was a comment that was a little off. Like it wasn't meant to be, but it was funny.
Sure.
I didn't catch it.
Oh,
Martha May was
Martha
here,
May was here. Yeah. All right. So, any last words, and I'll wrap up.
My only comment for this week with what's going on in the world is last night 12 families got that knock on the door that they lost their Marines or their corpsmen, and pray for those families. And I don't think that's going to be the end of it. So let's really focus on what's important.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a comment. Excellent point. We have one. Did your daughter grow up with you as quote shiny as you are? And I'm not referring to your hair. I get a lot of crap about my hair.
well, I don't understand that. It's like, at least it's not bald. Like, you got a nice head of hair.
Exactly, but I take care of it. It's always cut. It's, and I mean, even way back in the day when it was, permed and stuff.
Yeah.
You probably don't remember that because you weren't.
Do you have some pictures you can send
Only
us?
some photos.
Probably, yeah. So I've always taken care of my hair. So I get a lot of crap for it. It's okay.
They're just jealous.
It's probably true. I think what this question is so I'll answer that. The shiny acronym that I have, I came up with in late 2013, early 14, as probably the way I've tried to live life. So I think that's probably what that means is like as you grew up, did my life look the same or similar to what it is as the shiny? That's, I think, more what the point is. Does that make sense? So did you grow up seeing me as strong, seeing me as being hope, seeing me as being influential, seeing me as being necessary, and seeing me as being myself? I think is more what the...
Sure. Yeah. Did I see you that way?
As that way.
That way. I think I did, but without really realizing it.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you started to talk to me about shiny, what that meant to you, I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. And I think it accurately reflects you and who you are as a person and your character. And so I think, yeah, definitely I have seen those. Even as long as I can remember. Obviously those things change because we evolve as people.
Yes.
And
thankfully.
Jeez.
Yeah,
right.
She came around and she likes you now.
But yeah, I think absolutely that there's no question that you didn't have those things. It's not like it was all of a sudden like an existing thing. Like
Sure.
those have been apparent in you for as long as I can remember.
Yeah. I have a question for you.
Okay.
What are some things, you know, that you would take as negative and things that you would have liked to seen different? Like growing up or whatever in me.
Seen as negative. Well,
You don't have to censor yourself either.
No, I'm.
Well, it ties back to the thing you were saying earlier about being detached, right?
Yeah.
I definitely remember, like you not really being around. You were off doing your own thing, like trying to create a business, right? You were an entrepreneur. You spent a lot of time doing that. And I remember even like looking at my friends and stuff, like their dads were around, and I'm like, where's my dad? You know? But it ties to that whole thing of being detached, because I think like you raised us to be independent. And I didn't even realize that like at the time, obviously, when I was having all those thoughts and looking back, it's like, no, I think like in a way you did that on purpose. You raised us to be independent. And so at first I thought it was a negative thing, but I don't think it like, if you led a different life at that time, I would be a different person. I don't think I would be as dependent as I am now.
And with that, there's a lot of things that you came along with that you didn't like. And as you grow up to like, that, I think, most of the things that I did for a purpose.
Right.
Right.
And I knew that.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's good that you see the purpose, you know, now more than anything.
Yeah, it's not like you were just screwing off. I know that.
Yeah. No, right. But I was still at the band concerts. I was still at the games.
Absolutely.
I wasn't, you know, I wasn't a 40-hour a week, you know.
Right.
But I also didn't drink beer with you when you were a teenager. I also made sure that was, hey, I don't agree with this. Wait till you're older. Now, guess what? We have beer. And I can't drink beer. But,
yeah.
Right. You know, and so I think that there, as a thing that you see as a negative, is most definitely something that is, I don't regret it for sure. Would I have liked to seen a little bit more balance? Yes. But your mom and I had agreed on that balance a long time ago too.
Oh, yeah.
And so there was that mix in there as well. But for sharing that for sure.
Yeah.
You need to go, don't you? Wow, look at the time. It's 10 after. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It was fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
A lot of fun. I know people know that there was definitely negative for you know, you were all positive about it and me, and there's definitely things that are difficult as a parent to push your kids to do as they're growing up. So thanks for sharing that. Craig?
That's good to hear, because I have a 4.5-year-old. And just making sure that I prioritize my time as much as I can.
It is about
being an independent
it's
business
about
owner.
Purposeful. It's about purposeful living for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yep.
So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, I taught them to I work, to do, to produce, to be creative, you know, all those things. And you have to do it in ways that they don't know you're doing and understand at the time, and pushing them to do it. Go ahead.
There's a balance.
Yeah, you showed that hard work pays off.
Yeah.
And you showed me hard work, and that it paid off.
Yeah.
And what hard work does.
Yeah. What did I just tell you like a month ago? I'm like, Chanel, you're young. Just wait a little bit. Keep doing what you're doing. And all of a sudden it'll be different. Yeah. Cool. Any other questions?
No, but I could talk and talk and talk.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us. Make sure that you hammer that share button. That does help us a lot in the algorithms, helps people see the show and all those kinds of things. So, Craig, how can we find you?
Craig Bugland. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram.
And we're off next week.
Yes.
Yeah. Labor Day weekend. So we won't see you next week. We'll see you the week after. Enjoy your Labor Day weekend next week. Be shiny. Be strong. Be hope. Be influential. Be necessary. And be you.